Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here, joining you today to discuss yet another chapter in the history of the beat-em-up genre. Last week we looked at Capcom's Final Fight 2, a Super Nintendo exclusive from 1993, that in many ways could be viewed as the system's answer to Streets of Rage 2. Whilst Final Fight 2 was a fun little game, it was nowhere near the quality of Sega's offering. However, Final Fight 2 was not the only beat-em-up Capcom would release that year. Also in 1993, Capcom would bring Cadillacs and Dinosaurs to the market, a high-quality beat-em-up that was released exclusively in the arcades, that would never ever make it to the homes. So today we are going to be looking at this game in detail, what makes it special, and discuss why this little gem never saw a home release. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the mad story of Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, Capcom's high-quality lost arcade beat-em-up. Yeah! When it comes to arcade beat-em-ups released by Capcom, the most celebrated and famous of the whole bunch has to be Final Fight, released back in 1989. I would put its place in history partially down to the game's home ports and sequels, a luxury that the game in question today, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, never had. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is an arcade side-scrolling beat-em-up that was produced as a tie-in title to a greater franchise which we shall discuss in a moment. Game developers working with property license holders can result in fantastic synergy for both entities involved, resulting in profits all around. Some great examples of this include beat-em-ups we have covered before on this channel, such as Konami's X-Men arcade game and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Turtles in Time. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs falls into the same brackets as those just discussed. However, as we know, the greater franchise would at no point go on to receive a similar level of overall success. The Cadillacs and Dinosaurs arcade game was created to tie into the extremely short-lived Cadillacs and Dinosaurs animated series, which aired the exact same year the game was released. Both of these products were based off of an earlier comic book series known as Xenozoic Tales. Xenozoic Tales by Mark Schultz had already had a 6-year successful run as an independent comic book. The show and comic book dealt with many strong ecological and political issues that were central to the plot's development. Cadillacs and Dinosaurs was not unique in pushing this sort of narrative agenda to children via the use of animation, as other shows such as Captain Planet and The Planeteers would also spearhead the anti-pollution global warming movement. In fact, it makes you wonder how much of this sort of programming helped shape the political views of many millennials as a whole today. In this franchise's case, the show takes place in a fictional apocalyptic future, where after failing to listen to Greta Thunberg, the Great Cataclysm has taken place, which came around as a result to mankind failing to take responsibility for their actions. The Great Cataclysm has said to have been caused by man-made pollution, nuclear bomb detonations, oil spills, and the annihilation of species on a global scale. After mankind wasted its chances to become the dominant species, this somehow results in the return of the dinosaurs. The TV show focuses around the Cadillac driving Jack Tenrack, the leader of a crew of ecological freedom fighters known as the Mechanics, and Hannah Dundee, a foreign ambassador who hires Jack as her liaison to create clear communication between her land and the modern civilization. So what was the factor that made TV executives and Capcom themselves so keen to adopt a 6-year-old comic license? 2 words, ladies and gentlemen: bloody dinosaurs. 1993 was pretty much the year of the dinosaur. This was the same year that Jurassic Park was released, a smash hit movie directed by Steven Spielberg and produced by Kathleen Kennedy, based off the popular novel from 1990. The movie would even feature a musical score by John Williams, who had created the soundtrack of bloody Star Wars. The film would be considered a landmark in the development of computer-generated imagery and animatronic visual effects, and as a result would generate over $900 million at the box office, making it at the time the highest grossing film ever made. Prior to Jurassic Park's launch, it was no secret that the movie would probably be a huge success, so Capcom and others would begin work on Cadillac and Dinosaurs products before Jurassic Park even saw a release. Apart from the Capcom game and animated TV show, a huge toy line was also produced and marketed to make a boatload of cash off of the dinosaur craze. But sadly, everything would come crashing down for the IP that very same year. The TV series that was produced to feature a 13-episode run was aired on CBS Kids. The issue was that the programme was given an abysmal time slot, running on Saturday mornings after all of the popular children's TV shows had already aired, leading most kids to go off to play before the show would even start. To make matters worse, CBS Kids would interrupt Cadillacs and Dinosaurs halfway through the season, temporarily suspending it in favour of broadcasting the Olympics, meaning that many children who did get into the show would lose focus in the large gap in which it was off the air. The poor positioning the animated TV series received would lead to season 2 of the show being cancelled and toy manufacturing coming to an end. YouTuber Advertising Nuts does a fantastic job of documenting the short history of the TV animated series, if you care to learn more. But in our case today, we are now going to shift our entire focus to the Capcom game that used this failed license. A game that is of such high quality that it is probably more well known today than either the comic books, toys, or TV series. Perhaps even leading some to assume that the game is just a bizarre Capcom IP. Before we dive any further though, let's try and get our timeline right. The Cadillacs and Dinosaurs animated TV show would air beginning in September of 1993. Jurassic Park had made its debut in cinemas a few months earlier, in June of 1993, whilst the arcade game had arrived back in February of that year, meaning this title was ready and on the market before anything else. This does not surprise me though, as games would often arrive before the launch of an accompanying TV series. The X-Men arcade game was no different, which is why the whole game's art direction is based off of the show's pilot, rather than the Fox Kids animated show itself. In terms of the game, upon reaching the player select screen it becomes clear that there is the option to play as 4 different characters. These include Jack Tenrak, the leader of a group of ecological freedom fighters who we discussed earlier, Hannah Dundee, the diplomat we also covered earlier, who seems to share the same surname as Australian outback adventurer Crocodile Dundee, and we have Mustafa Cairo, an engineer and good friend of Jack, and Meso Bradovich, an elusive gentleman with a mysterious past who has a strongman fighting style. In Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, the game features up to 3-player cooperative play, offering a fun multiplayer experience for 3 friends on 1 cabinet. Prior to inserting a coin, the game also offers up a simple digestible plot. A group of dinosaurs are seen attacking a village of people, leading to Jack to quickly jump to an assumption that this must be caused by black marketeers, as dinosaurs apparently do not attack people. The game then cuts to black marketeers skinning the dinosaurs, leading to animal rights extremist Jack announcing that he will crush them. The first stage takes place on the east coast of the US in the year 2513. The stage backdrop displays New York City submerged in water. This is evident by the depiction of the World Trade Center still standing, suggesting that this game must be set in a completely different alternative timeline to our own. After a quick confrontation with black marketeers, the gameplay opens instantly with a brawl between the players and CPU sprites. Like most beat-em-ups, players traverse from stage to stage, fighting through these hordes of enemies, taking on bosses at the end of each level. However, dinosaurs also make appearances throughout the game, as neutral CPU-controlled characters who can attack both playable characters and the enemies alike. You just can't stop Mother Nature, I suppose. As illustrated earlier on the player select screen, each of the 4 playable characters have their own strengths and weaknesses. In Cadillacs and Dinosaurs' case, these characters have several attacks they can access. This includes 2 special moves, each including one that depletes a player's health upon contact when executed, just like in Final Fight. In this game, team attacks are also executable between 2 players. Pretty simple stuff really. Like in many beat-em-ups, characters can also pick up and use weapons, including various firearms, throwable objects, and melee weapons, such as clubs. Or are they, meal weapons? In terms of the stages the player must traverse, we have briefly touched upon the submerged Manhattan stage. That starts out with fighting taking place atop building rooftops. Once players have dealt with a few fairly Mad Max looking enemies, players then enter one of these buildings, illustrating a rather derelict interior. Like Final Fight before it, this is another beat 'em up from Capcom that seems to once again take place in a broken utopian world, which is evident further to players once they have exited the building, offering a more close-up look at the crumbling New York City skyline. The world featured in Xenozoic Tales is actually perfect for a beat 'em up, so I can see why Capcom would have been keen to make this game even if Jurassic Park was not in the equation. The boss fight that takes place against Vice-T and his gang of punks does not prove too challenging for players, but I must say that I love the slow motion defeats the bosses suffer in this game, an element Capcom seems to have plucked straight from Street Fighter 2. After leaving the city in the sea, characters arrive in a Cadillac at a swamped forest. The scenery in this stage is much more reminiscent of what many gamers would associate with a game that is partially focused around dinosaurs. The stage is full of armed poachers, aggressive dinosaurs formidable to the player and enemy sprites alike, knee-deep swamps to wade through, and mid-boss battles to encounter such as a mace-wielding enemy named Lash T. Past this point, players discover a large quantity of dinosaur carcasses who appear to have been slaughtered by the boss of this stage, known as the Butcher, who looks a lot like that Chinese fighter from Samurai Showdown. The third stage, Hell Road, is a novel one as it takes place riding a Cadillac through an Arizona-like desert. This stage makes me feel nostalgic for my own driving exploits through Utah, Nevada, New Mexico and Arizona. Probably my favourite region of the USA. After all, you have to love places that hardly have any people living in them. After defeating bike-riding enemies, players progress to the next stage, which takes place at Jack's Garage. This industrial looking stage is a pretty big garage with all sorts of Cadillacs on display in the background. As players progress, the stage begins to look more and more like a typical factory stage, which for some reason we seem to always get included within beat 'em ups. After dealing with the hordes of enemies, the team gets a distress call from Jeremy Corbyn, whose village is under attack by dinosaurs. Throughout this stage there are plenty of humans and dinosaurs to take out, but as the players progress further they start coming across these bizarre human lizard hybrid enemies who strongly resemble Blanca from Street Fighter 2. Since this stage is known as the Village of Flames, players eventually get to the village, which is as expected, covered in flames. At the end of the stage, Jeremy Corbyn is shot by the boss for having a big mouth. The boss, who happens to be an angry doctor, transforms himself into a dinosaur-like beast in the latter portion of the fight. After he has been defeated, it appears that his goal was to create new life forms to help inhabit the Earth. The next stage, named Jungle and Mine, offers exactly what it says on the tin, a jungle and mine stage. I particularly like the jungle section as I love the rain and thunderstorm animations this beautiful stage offers. There are also Diplodocuses on the stage, who are so huge that they can kill players simply by stepping on them. The boss of this stage is another hideous creation of mad doctors and scientists, continuing to stretch out this game's story. The players then head to the vault, which is located back in the ruins of New York City. Players once again get to indulge in many classic beat 'em up tropes here, such as being able to smash barrels and going down in a lift where enemies repeatedly attack from both sides. Typical beat 'em up action really. The end of this area features a boss battle against more genetically engineered beasts, who have been set on the player by a mad scientist who wants to create a new world. He laughs maniacally on a monitor in the background and orders the killing of the players. The 8th stage takes place in the underworld as the team continue to pursue the scientist. In this lab-like stage, monsters can be seen in the background, kept in large jars. Probably as no shock to anyone playing, the monsters in the background break free from their holdings, causing trouble for the player in any way they can. As players continue through the underground, areas begin to look more like subterranean sewers, full of flamethrowers in the walls to cause further problems for adventurers. Paired with the continuous onslaught of enemies, it becomes clearer by the moment that the end of the game is drawing closer each moment. Sewers soon become caverns as players adventure down deeper until finally reaching the mad scientist himself, Fessenden. Fessenden takes a serum, turning him into a beast, but as the fight progresses it appears that this is not even his final form, as he takes a larger, more aggressive form factor as the fight continues. When he is finally dealt with, it brings Cadillacs and Dinosaurs to a close. The end sequence of the game sees the laboratory self-destructing, which features Hannah falling over and Jack staying behind to try and save her. After the game ends, as the credits roll, the other two playable characters are seen walking home in a depressed state through the desert wasteland, assuming that Jack and Hannah are in fact dead. However, in the sequence's final throes, Jack and Hannah appear whizzing up next to them in a Cadillac, giving the title the happy ending players would deserve. As you can tell from all of this, Cadillacs and Dinosaurs is one hell of a fantastic arcade beat 'em up. This includes the game's music itself that complements the game's well put together gameplay and sensible and easy to understand narrative progression throughout. The game tells a far more intriguing story than the majority of other titles from the same genre. I can only imagine that the reasoning behind the fact that we have never seen any home ports of this classic falls down to the fact that the Cadillacs and Dinosaurs animated series bombed so badly. It would probably have made little sense for Capcom at the time to have ported a licensed game to home systems when the IP owners themselves failed to position their brand properly. Nearly all marketing and damage control to Cadillacs and Dinosaurs would have been solely in Capcom's hands if they had chosen to go down the route of publishing the game on consoles at a later date. The game clearly has a decent sized following today, due to the quality experience that this title delivers. However, one would imagine that trying to re-release this game today on modern hardware would probably come with issues, due to Capcom not owning the license to be able to simply re-release a title using the Cadillacs and Dinosaurs brand. They certainly had their fair share of problems when it comes to Marvel games, so one assumes this title just falls into that very same category. Interestingly, despite the brand failing, this was not the last ever Cadillacs and Dinosaurs game, as another game using the branding would arrive on the Sega Mega CD of all platforms in 1994. This title, that was subtitled The Second Cataclysm, is a little rail shooter that was packed to the brim with full motion video. As expected, this game bombed miserably, selling well under 20,000 units. About the most interesting thing about this Cadillacs and Dinosaurs game was that it was developed by a company known as Rocket Science Games, and one of the developers who worked on this obscure title was Elon Musk of all people, the famous engineer, industrial designer and technology entrepreneur. I guess this game isn't one of his most notable achievements. To summarise everything we have talked about today, I genuinely think that this game could have seen home releases if CBS Kids had not have screwed up promoting the Cadillacs and Dinosaurs brand so badly. This whole concept had the potential to become a merchandise empire, so it's a great shame that none of this was to be. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the mad story of Cadillacs and Dinosaurs and why it has become somewhat of a lost Capcom game when it comes to being able to play this game on home hardware officially. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, I am currently uploading 3 videos on gaming history to my channel each week, so if you want more content like this, make sure you like, subscribe and hit the notification bell for new content, and the ability to be able to go through my backlog for hundreds of free hours of entertainment during this global pandemic. Finally, my channel is partially funded by the generous donations I receive via Patreon. Patrons can earn a credit and a shout out at the end of these videos. These people make working full time on YouTube just that little bit less scary, so I'd like to thank all of you very much for that. Huge shout-outs go out to Carl Johnson, Sebastian Veles, SpongeMat B, YT, House of a Ted, Daniel Daly, Synth Spacies, Aldra Bazanski, Osobi Kwang DX, Michael Baker, Tom Elliott, Computer Man, Antonio Rodriguez, Craig Jenkins, RetroReversing.com, Dan Barlow Jr., Joel, Mean Machine Dean, and all of my other patrons. Yeah!